Over centuries, man has been innovative in all dimensions of life, be it good or bad. Thank God that his innovation in terms of punishment and execution has greatly improved in favor of the convicts or even the victims. I wonder, could it retrogress to the ancient times? And this cruelty is subjecting to Christians. How many of us would still hold on their faith today? Come on, let me know in the comments whether you would persevere the following atrocity in the name of faith. The following are 12 most excruciating methods of execution which some of early church members preferred to underwent rather than denouncing their faith, worship pagan gods, or even Caesar. Remember, number 12 is the craziest. And now, let's dive into these madness of ancient methods of execution. Number one, impalement. This is a method of torture and execution whereby a stake, pole, or a sphere was being penetrated into a human body, mostly through the bunghole, or being perforated at the victim's stomach or the neck. Then you are left there until you die. Oof, what an excruciating pain. Number two, boiling. Boiling was another method of execution where the convict would be lowered into a cauldron, that is a large hot metal pot with a liquid like water, tar, tallow, molten lead, and in most cases oil. This is where one was fried like a fish while still alive. Man, it's torturesome even to think of how an alive human being would sizzle in the pot of oil as they are turned into a fried big meat of a kind. One person or the disciple of Jesus who underwent this kind of torture is Apostle John. Though, fortunately, when Apostle John was dropped into the hot oil, the hot oil sensed John scent. It got confused, and all of a sudden it regressed back to room temperature. Man, we need such an anointing. See there? Number three, drawn and quartered. Wow, this is another grueling form of execution. A lawbreaker would be dragged to the place of execution, drawn by a horse, and in some instances the victim was tied on his forelimbs, that is, 2 hands and 2 feet, and then tied to 4 horses, which are then started into running in different directions so as to rip the body apart into 4 quarters. Duh, I need a glass of cold water now. Number four, sewing into halves. This is another irksome and excruciating method of execution whereby an offender would be sewed into 2 halves while still alive. The cutting was done sagitally, that is, from head downwards, thus two right and left equal halves, or transversely, that is, across at the stomach, And an example of one who underwent this is a disciple of Jesus, Simon the Zealot. And also, according to traditions, Isaiah the prophet was inserted in a trunk of tree, and he was sewed into 2 halves. Number five, burning at the stake, also known as immolation. Here, a convict was tied at a stick, and then the fire is lighted, where he would start burning from down upwards. This was another horrible form of execution. It was the most common not only in antiquity, but until to date, and particularly when caught by public doing a capital offense such as witchcraft, theft, and murder. For instance, a person who underwent this is Polycarp. Polycarp was a church father who was a bishop of Smyrna, but fortunately fire refused to consume him, and so eventually he was stabbed to death. Number 6, thrown into the animals. Animals like lions, bear, cheetah, leopards, snakes, crocodiles, bulls, elephants, and wild dogs were used to kill the victims or even inflict serious injuries. In most cases, and particularly in the Roman Empire, the emperor, governors, officials, and the citizens would fill a colosseum to watch as the convicts are being hauled by the animals. Sometimes the most fierce animals like lions, buffalo, tigers, and the like were released to engage in a fight with the condemned person as the crowd cheers. It was like the football of the day. I also believe betting was like how many bites will he stand before he succumbed to death. Ignatius of Antioch was one of the most famous victims of Christians who underwent this particular kind of torture, and his life was terminated by the teeth of these ferocious animals. Number 7, thrown into the sea. I believe this method of execution is self-explanatory. Though it seems intolerable and less torturous, it wasn't an easy way of dying either. One of the famous ancient Christians to be martyred through this method was the Apostolic Father and Bishop of Rome, Pope Clement I. Number 8, decapitation, also known as beheading. This is another agonizing mode of execution as a capital punishment whereby head is separated from the body. Initially, criminals were being decapitated using an axe, but later Romans introduced a sword which was considered a more honorable instrument of death for the Roman citizens. Some of the notable religious figures to experience this form of punishment were the most famous John the Baptist and Saint Paul the Apostle, also died through decapitation. Number 9, amputation or mutilation. This is whereby a convict was being confined at a given place, and then the unbearable heinous act of execution starts. This method was also known as lynching or death by 1,000 cuts, for the victims were cut the body organs one by one at a given duration until they die. Some victims would stay until the heart is removed. Today, finger, tomorrow, hand, the other day, nose, legs, ears, teeth, tongue, gouging of the eyes. Oh, come on, stop it. Yes, that way until they give up the ghost. Number 10, crucifixion. Now, this one, every Christian relates with it very well. And whenever it is mentioned, Christians view it differently rather than just a mere ancient method of execution. But as a matter of fact, this method of torture was still there many centuries before Christ, and it was widely used beyond imagination. At notable times, a single judgment would condemn thousands to be crucified in a single day. Jesus Christ is the most popular to ever experience this agonizing mode of execution. Peter the disciple and Andrew were also martyred through the cross. Unlike Jesus, who only spent 3 hours on the cross, majority would take a day and others up to 3 days while still alive and languishing in great agony. Number 11, lapidation, also known as stoning. Stoning to death is possibly the cheapest dog's age method of execution. This is a method that even God Himself had recommended to the Israelites for breaking of a number of rules. Over the years, the accused mostly of a capital offense like blasphemy, idolatry, and immorality have been subjected to lapidation. This has been applied to animals too, thus making it more humiliating to die like a dog. Mostly it was meant to serve as a warning to the others. Though Saint Stephen had not committed such capital offense, he was the first among the disciples of Jesus to die by stoning. Number 12, fraying, also known as skinning or peeling. This is now the most excruciating, unbearable means of execution ever, according to me. I believe even the devil is still in disbelief that a normal human being invented this kind of grueling, uncomfortable, irritating, irksome, inhuman, unbelievable, agonizing, overwhelming, name it, kind of torture for a fellow human being. In fraying, an offender was peeled the skin like potato, since humans don't have a skin like that of a cow or goat. This process would take hours to peel the whole body while the victim is still alive. Oof, the city is becoming extremely hot now. According to traditions, Saint Bartholomew is said to be one of the Christian martyrs who underwent fraying. Note: these methods of execution were not initially devised and executed to punish only Christians, but the general public when convicted of a crime. Actually, most of these executions methods were invented many centuries before Christianity, light from the Persian, Assyria, and the Roman Empire. The only key difference is that the other convicts had no choice but to face the punishment. But for Christians, in most cases, they had an opportunity to recant their faith and luckily walk free, but they chose to face it anyway. Are you such an inexorable believer? Come on, which method would you prefer then? Let me know in the comment section.